our etheric body is a musical body, that the medium of ether is sound. Everyone who studied the elements understands that the ether element, it fills all space, that the medium of ether is sound, and the other elements as sound step down from the etheric field. So to talk about the etheric body, to talk about the subtle body, is to talk about a sonic body, that we live in a tuniverse. So the music of creation is being played by essence of self. And again, the goddess Saraswati is playing the music of creation. So how does the breath play this music of creation? Well, I believe that one of the most important things I ever figured out as I sought to understand the play of the elements, the elemental keynotes, ether, air, fire, water, earth, the elemental harmonics which define earth, solidity, water, the medium for life, fire, the transformation, the working energy, air, the intelligence, the feedback loop, and ether, the overall space within the larger spaces of time and space. The five elements were the lingua franca of the science of the ancients, and cross-culturally and trans-historically, all of the ancient cultures in some form or another work with these elemental keynotes, work with these elemental harmonics. So as we breathe, the body, so Saraswati, the intelligence which rides on the breath, is playing the vina of creation. That musical instruments have always traditionally been made of guts and hide, and we're arguing that the breath plays the musical instrument of the body, that as we breathe on a molecular, on an atomic, on a cellular level, first of all, as we breathe in, the tissue stretches into an attunement, which we call air, and air resonates with a higher intelligence of the soul, and the soul steps down into air, and air is the feedback mechanism, which is embodied in the nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system. So air is this intelligence, this presence, this cognizance. And then as we continue to breathe, the tissue moves from this elongation into entrainment with the solar force, and the tissue entrains with fire, the power, the creativity, the passion of the human condition. Then as we continue to breathe, the tissue moves into a still point, balancing the forces within, without, above, and below that we call earth, where energy crystallizes into form, and then the tissue, as the cycle of the breath, contracts into a lunar attunement, which we call water, a cleansing, a releasing, a crystallizing of consciousness into form, and then back in its cycle to its neutral source. So every breath is a process of natural and cosmic attunement to these universal keynotes of manifestation. Ether, the overall space; air, the intelligence that fills that space; fire, the transformational working energy in that space; water, the living medium that sustains that; and earth, the boundaries. And these are musical notes in a tuniverse, musical notes in the order of creation. Now, the principal philosophy, one of the principal philosophies, there's 7 orthodox philosophies in the Sanatana Dharma, and one of the principal philosophies, and it's truly one of the most popular today, is the philosophy of Advaita, A-D-V-E-D-A, Advaita. I'm not much of a speller. And Advaita means not two. It's the philosophy of non-dualism. It's a philosophy of oneness. And Advaita is a philosophy which has attracted some of the greatest minds in history and certainly attracts many of us today. And again, Advaita is a philosophy of a radical monism. It's Advaita saying there is not duality, that everything is made of a oneness. Now, traditionally, the root philosophy of India is called Sankhya, which is the root philosophy of India and most of Asia. It's the basis of both Buddhism and Hinduism, this ancient Sankhya, which means to enumerate. And Sankhya is dualistic. It presupposes two dimensions, Purusha, which is spirit, the intelligence in everyone and everything, the life in everyone and everything, and Prakriti, which is nature, everything else that isn't spirit, that isn't the divine intelligence, and a duality between subject, Purusha, cognizance, and Prakriti, nature, the goddess, manifestation. But Advaita rejects this duality, and it's articulated in the most profound way by the 12th century philosopher Adi Shankara. And Shankara, in the crest jewel of discrimination, offers us one of the most primordial discussions of this profound philosophy. But in any case, Advaita would argue that there's just this one intelligence, that everything is made of this intelligence. And that the substance of creation is this intelligence, as we were looking at in these two Upanishads that we focused on, that everything is made of this higher intelligence, everything is made of this self-sacrifice of the goddess. Again, in the Sanatana Dharma, one of the fundamental views of creation is in terms of what are called the Gunas. And the word guna comes from the Sanskrit root. Actually, let me do this here. The word guna comes from the Sanskrit root giri, which means a vortex, like a whirlwind of energy. Usually, guna is translated as quality, but this, according to Theos Barnard, great scholar of Sanskrit, as good as we've had in the West, the founder of the Sanskrit department at Columbia, some believe that he was the incarnation of Padmasambhava. There's an amazing book about his life called The White Lama. And he was the first Westerner to be invited to visit Tibet and charged with the great responsibility of being this Padmasambhava to bring the wisdom, ancient Tibetan wisdom, to the West. But in any case, in Theos Barnard's book on Hindu philosophy, he tells us that this word guna comes from an Indo-European root giri, which means vortex or field. And in Sankhya, the root of Sankhya are the three gunas. And the three gunas are sattva, the force of equilibrium in nature; rajas, the fire of creativity; and tamas, the crystallization of consciousness into matter. So neutral, sattva; positive, rajas; and negative, tamas. I like to think of this in terms of the breath. So here we have the stillness of the breath. Connecting to the source is the neutral, the expansive breath that resonates with the sun, rajas, and the contracting breath that resonates with the lunar force, with the earth and moon, tamas. So we're looking at, here we see a picture from the amazing micro-clairvoyant scholar Edwin I. Babbitt. We're looking at Babbitt's atom. Babbitt was a micro-clairvoyant who witnessed the fundamental processes of creation. And I want you to picture this atom as a living, breathing, vibrant field of energy. And again, moving from a inward communion with an oversoul, a higher dimension, which we call sattva guna, the force of equilibrium, communing with being, and then radiating out in the breath as the breath expands into a solar attunement, which we call rajas guna, and then contracting into a lunar attunement and a crystallization of consciousness and energy into form. So everything in creation is breathing, every atom, every molecule, every cell, every organism in this tooniverse is breathing through this cycle of natural and cosmic attunement of sattva, soul communion, communion with the higher organizing intelligence of the mystery which is outside of this dimension, and then radiating into, as it continues to breathe, like a Hawaiian guitar, stretching into attunement with the solar force and inspiration. Again, our Latin word spiritus, which means breath. Our word spiral, again, comes from the Latin spiritus, breath, inspiration, respiration. So as we inspire, we respire. We're attuned in respiration to the breath of life, to this higher intelligence. And inspiration in that fiery inspiration of attunement with the solar force. And then as the diaphragm descends, the field falls into attunement with the what we call the lunar force of the earth and water elements of tamas guna, the negative field. So this is why Dr. Stone called his study of energy polarity, because energy always moves from a neutral source into a field of expression and then crystallizes into form and then is drawn back into the source. That every breath is this movement from neutral to positive to negative and then back into its source. Every cycle is the cycle of the breath. Now, I've spent the greater part of my adult life in a body of wisdom that's been called Polarity Therapy, and is the fruit of the life work of Dr. Randolph Stone, who many consider to be the father of energy medicine in the West. And And polarity therapy is unique as a healing art for the intention to address the soul. And the root principles of polarity therapy, Dr. Stone explains that unless you have addressed this organizing intelligence, you haven't really reached the level that affects healing. That healing is about making a change in the body's relationship to its nucleus, in the body's relationship to this organizing intelligence. So that in my book, Esoteric Anatomy, the Body is Consciousness, we really develop Dr. Stone's work quite a bit, and I highly recommend it if you'd like to go deeper into these ideas and into a discussion of these images which we're touching upon. But polarity therapy is unique as a healing art for the intention to address the soul, the animating intelligence. Dr. Stone likened the soul to the nucleus of the energy fields. That again, it was the organizing intelligence and at the heart of this feedback loop which defines life, this feedback loop of intelligence. Now, in polarity, we address the soul holistically. So we have what we call the energy balancing bodywork. And the purpose of the bodywork is to facilitate an experience of balanced energy and soul communion. Because again, every atom of your body has a potential to be a well to being. That when the gunas are in harmony, they are a well to being. They are a portal to receive the vitality, the wholeness, the blessings of the soul. That the purpose of our energy balancing is to potentize our relationship to the soul. To, again, potentize means to bring the field into more coherence, more harmony, so that we can receive the potential of the higher dimension, of the finer forces of higher intelligence. So we do this through energy balancing bodywork, again, to cultivate sattva guna, that the fields will be vibrating with the force of equilibrium in nature. We also have very, very powerful dietary regimes, and a dietary regime called the Polarity Diet, where we only eat sattvic. It's a cleansing diet to again bring the body into communion with a higher level of its own innate intelligence. A third aspect of polarity therapy are our energy exercises. Again, your body is an atom, your body is a molecule, your body is a cell in the body of nature, in the body of Gaia. And that the field around us, the subtle universal elements, step down through the joints. And the range of motion and mobility of the joints is one of the keys to our health and well-being. So that we have this system of energy exercises, and I recommend you check out my YouTube video on energy exercises, easy energy exercises. And the purpose of these exercises is to enhance the fluidity, the flexibility, the ease, and the range of motion of the joints, because the joints are another place where where this universal life steps down from the energy fields of nature and the cosmos around us into the energy fields of our body. That again, the Greek word atmosphere. Atmos means breath. The atmosphere around the earth is the life breath of a living earth, and the earth is breathing through these subtle universal harmonics, which are etheric in their nature, and they step down to sustain our physical body, and our body has its being in attunement with these subtle universal harmonics. But any system that cultivates the fluidity and the mobility of the joints is one of the keys to a pain-free, a healthy, and active, a vibrant life. So in our understanding, okay, I'll just leave it at that. I think I went into how that steps down in the previous video in this series. And the fourth element of this system of energy balancing bodywork, energy balancing cleansing diet, energy balancing exercise, the fourth element of this is this knowledge. And a big part of the work I do is to topple the dominant paradigm, which denies the spirituality of our life here on Earth, and is a materialistic view of the world and a view of our life. I'm a carbon Bigfoot, unfortunately. I've made the choice to go to India virtually every year for the last, more than 40 years. At first, it was a quest. It was a quest to understand why this human condition is so painful. And it was a quest to somehow go beyond that pain. And in recent years, as I fortunately have left that pain behind, it's been a quest for the deepest kind of understanding of the human condition. One of my teachers is a sage by the name, or was a sage, he's no longer in the body, Harilal Punja, affectionately known as Papaji. And I want to talk about Papaji because on one hand, if you go to his 3-volume biography, Nothing